So today I wanted to talk just a little bit about making meaning, how the mind makes meaning, or how we can be aware of that process. And it's kind of linked to a couple of weeks ago when I talked about going beyond concepts, looking at the mind that was beyond that meaning making, if you like, the concept making mind. So they're almost like sort of opposites, but I think in fact they're different, just slightly different directions that awareness can go. You can sort of ease into that sort of um, relaxing the conceptualizing mind and go in that direction to a more sort of non-conceptual space, or you can actually look at what's happening in the mind from a very relaxed space. Um, so I think we can use this sort of meaning making aspect of the mind. We can look at it in different ways because one of the ways is, which I've spoken about a number of times, is when we is how we make meaning by taking little scraps of experience from the world around us. Sometimes just as simply from other people. If you notice that you are having a conversation with someone and you kind of use their words, you echo some of their words back in your own conversation. Um, I've talked on a number of occasions about the film The Usual Suspects, and there's a scene in that where you can see one particular character has constructed an entire life story through the contents of the walls of the office that he's sitting in. It's quite an amazing moment. It's a rather violent film. It's quite an amazing moment in that film of sort of seeing, or for me, it's a metaphor of how we sort of construct our world through taking in scraps of sights and sounds, just the senses automatically sort of um, constructing our world. I was thinking it's a bit like squirrels or chipmunks, sometimes when they just they're looking at things, and sometimes they use it straight away. Sometimes they're nuts that they collect, in my case from my neighbour's bird feeder. They'll take them and they'll eat them straight away, but often they'll sort of hide them away. And maybe we're a little bit like that in that it's somewhere in the psyche, it's somewhere in the mind, this sense information that we've collected, and at some point it will form part of a thought or a sentence, a way of looking at the world. So that's one way, the more external way. But this morning I'm more interested in the internal way by through watching our thoughts, watching the mind really as it works. So be curious when you notice thoughts arising, images arising in the mind. So we're less concerned about sense experiences, though you see what the mind does with those sense experiences. But what happens when we're aware of this process of the mind starting to, or to make meaning from what arises from these scraps of internal experience? And they can be really, really small, really slight. Yeah. So it's easy to pull away from this sort of experience and feel like, oh, well, I'm starting to get a bit drifty or a bit sort of lost and or caught in thought. But actually, if we can stay with those moments, then they start to become more clearly known. It can feel like we're, by staying with, we're actually moving towards what's happening. I think there's sometimes an automatic movement when we feel like we're being a little bit lost or a bit caught, to just pull back slightly, and that's a really interesting moment. If you can notice that moment, the mind pulling back, and see, well, actually, what happens if I can stay with this? Um, you're moving towards seeing that conceptualizing process with a bit more objectivity. So with more right view, because right view knows this is what's happening. This is the conceptualizing process. This is the mind in the process of um, making meaning or making something understood to itself. So it's a chance to see how the mind constructs, how it contrives itself into being. And I find it really fascinating. So if you can have some uh, just a curiosity about what's happening there, while keeping the mind really relaxed or really open. Curiosity is a great help here as to just, what is happening in these moments, and not feeling that you have to have any answers or even that you have to be able to make sense of what's happening, but just having the curiosity. But what does thinking feel like in the mind? We can recognize thinking in awareness, but what's that experience like? How do you know that thinking is happening? What is it that sort of signals that to you? So being aware of that, or image making when there are images in the mind. So we want to be careful not to over focus or narrow down too much. Um, Keep the awareness quite broad, and it's very helpful as well to keep in touch with body sensations. So it can be a kind of whole body awareness. So how do I know I'm thinking? Can be one of the useful questions. Looking at what the actual experience is like. When there are images in the mind, are they really clear? Are they photographic like, or are they something that's much more vague, nebulous, but somehow the mind knows the meaning, it knows what's being thought about, or yeah. Um, I was doing quite a bit of this. This was arising in my own practice this week, and I realized that at some point it's almost like uh, the whole meaning. There were words sort of coming in from one side of the mind. It felt like I know that location is a concept in itself, but there were words coming from a different place to the images, and the images were very hard to pin down. They'd just go in a puff of smoke if I tried to pin them down. But there were sort of line drawings, a few lines, and a few sort of daubs of colour in vague shapes. I know there's a style of painting like this, and I can't think what it's called, if it even has a name. But I wondered the painters that paint like that. I wonder, is it because of what they see when they look in a meditative kind of way at their own experience, at their own minds? So yeah, play around with this if you like, and also feel free to keep the practice more simple. If you feel that you start to get a bit heady or things get a bit tight, then just breathe into the body. Let spaciousness be created. Okay, so that's it for now. If you'd like to set up your posture.